I have never seen a badging or a certification process that I have liked as like a learner or an educator. Are you really going to get a good sense of that from like a couple of multiple choice questions and like a proctored assessment of what someone does? Probably not. Like that partnerships motion is
Cool.
now really starting to actually hum as of this year. If you are someone who has the curiosity, the drive, and the willingness to adapt and learn, the world is your oyster right now.
Welcome to Move the Needle, the show where we explore how teams turn data into growth. Real stories, proven playbooks. Let's get into it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Databox's podcast, Move the Needle. Today, I have a very special guest, Yash Tekriwal from Clay. Clay is a data orchestration software company that helps you enrich and orchestrate your data for your sales and marketing so that you can do much more improved targeting, personalization, et cetera, et cetera. We're actually customers. I don't know if you know. And then Yash is responsible for ecosystem growth there. They have a term that they termed at Clay called go-to-market engineering. So Yash is responsible for making sure that the ecosystem of go-to-market engineers is growing. I think I did it justice. Anything you want to add about what you do or what Clay does, Yash, to get
No,
going?
I think you did it great justice, especially given that I like gave you the lowdown 5 minutes before this. So you captured it well.
Yeah. I'm somewhat familiar with Clay. Like I said, we're customers, so
Yeah.
somewhat aware. I'm sure there's things about Clay that I don't know. So, but have a decent handle on it. And I love ecosystem stuff. I think you may or may not know, but yeah, you do know because I know we spoke years ago, right, about building out the
Yeah,
partner play. Yeah. So I think a
exactly.
few
This
years
is a
back,
good full circle moment.
one of your investors said, "Hey, you should talk to Pete," and we ended up talking early on when you were just getting your partner ecosystem going. And
Yep.
so now you're probably what, 2 years into it now, doing that?
2 years into it now. Yeah. I remember we talked to you. We also talked to Brian Signorelli, both very
Oh,
helpful
yeah.
conversations because you were both very
Awesome.
early on the partnership side.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it actually did inform a lot of how we thought about like our early decisions, who we reached out to, how we built the program. And it was
Nice.
foundationally helpful. Like that partnerships motion is
Cool.
now really starting to actually hum as of this year.
Oh,
And I
that's
think
awesome.
because we got the foundational pieces down pat, I'm not as
Yeah.
nervous about like how it's going to scale. Which is going to be great.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. If I ever
Yeah.
go off and, become a full-time consultant helping SaaS companies with their, partner programs, you'll be my first endorsement there. So thank you.
Happy to provide the testimonial for sure.
Um, so today we're going to talk a little bit about, the role of ecosystem development and growth and how that kind of impacts a broader business at Clay. And also how the work you're doing connects to the broader strategy at Clay there as well. So maybe we start with a little bit of the strategy on Clay. Maybe give us a little bit more history of Clay. I know you guys like have this huge and growing following, but I imagine there's still a lot of people out there that have no clue what you actually do and all that. So maybe just start there.
Yeah. So I think for sure, there's actually now an increasing number of people I think that like know our taglines or have seen our marketing or know the brand and still have no clue what we do. So
Yeah.
that is 100% true. I think like a fun story I can share there is that we had a debate about the like ROI of subway ads in New York, in the winter of 2025. We ended up doing them and I think they were massively successful. Brilliant designs from the creative team. The tagline for all of them was uh, insert X artist, like, Monet had paint, GTM has clay. Or like,
Okay.
Da Vinci had blank, GTM has clay. Things like that
Okay.
with like very
Yeah.
subtle, great clay branding on it. Um, and so we got really positive reception on those ads. And I kept sending our team like screenshots of texts from people that would be like, that's your company, right? And
Yeah.
so from
Yeah.
an awareness standpoint, super great. And then also
Yeah.
our head of finance once asked me, he was like, do any of them know what we do? And I was like, no. He's like,
No, no, no.
I don't know what the ROI on that is. I was like, totally fair, but at least they know who we are, right? That's
Are
the
you
first
from New
step.
York City? Is that why you had all these text messages?
No, I think New
Yeah.
York is a clustering of a bunch of people. Yeah, I'm from
Yeah.
Virginia
Okay.
actually.
Okay.
Um, but so that was fun. And I think just to explain it for the people on, like you did it
Sure.
justice, but like,
While we're telling stories, it reminds me of a story. So I worked at HubSpot forever, and once HubSpot got big and IPO'd and everything, if I had like a T-shirt on, or I would get, "Oh, do you work at HubSpot? Or do you know HubSpot?" And of course, I got used to hearing that, right? Of course,
Right.
like I live outside of Boston, so also people knew it from an employer perspective. So I've
Right.
been at Databox for 9 years now. And so I was playing indoor soccer the other night, and my team, we just wear black T-shirts. So I have my Databox T-shirt on. So at the end of the game, one of the guys on the other teams comes over. He's like, "Oh, do you know Databox?" And I'm like, "Oh, in fact, I do know Databox." And like he was a customer, and I didn't know. So like it's cool. It's kind of cool when you like run
Yeah.
into those scenarios. So it doesn't happen as much at Databox as it did at HubSpot, but we'll get there.
I think it's still wonderful when you do, right? Like I often tell my parents this actually, because my parents still have no clue what I do. Uh,
Totally.
they but like now they're hearing it from their friends. They're like, "Oh yeah, right. Like Josh is at Clay. That's this company, right?"
Right.
And I think the like
Yeah.
fun thing about that for me at least, and I imagine for you as well, is that we do operate in this like very specific SaaS AI bubble, and
Totally.
I know that there's a whole world outside of that. But it's cool to see when our bubbles get large enough that we start to actually bleed into other ecosystems, and it feels like it
Totally.
makes the work more real. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. For most of my time at HubSpot, when people asked my dad what I did, his response was, "Do you know how when you go to Google and you have to like sort through all the crap to find what you want?" He would say,
Yep.
"That's what my son does. He bugs up Google." Right? Because at HubSpot we taught people how to do everything. Anyway,
That
all
is
right,
an
get back to
incredible
Clay. What the hell
explanation.
does Clay do?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Clay. So Clay, I would say data orchestration is the simplest way of thinking about it. It's a buzzword,
Yeah.
I would say, for the biggest problem I think any salesperson, any marketer, any customer success person knows is that you've got all your teams trying to put all the data into one central store of truth. No one's doing it in the same consistent way. It inevitably gets messy. Hygiene is an issue. Adding in external data to keep buttressing the system becomes a tertiary issue, and it all compounds. So I think what
Okay.
data orchestration often means is we get to use all the enrichment providers we partner with, all the AI tools that are now available to people to help you build
Mhm.
systems that do a lot of the cleaning for you so that
Okay.
your team doesn't have to spend time worrying about data quality or data accuracy. They can just spend time thinking about
Yeah.
the human relationships, the activities that actually go generate and retain revenue.
Okay. So I knew about the data enrichment, and that's primarily what we use you for, right? So like we'll get somebody to sign up for our product, and we don't get much information. We've tried to get more information. It ruins our sign up rate. So when we get a company email and name, we then use you to go and do a bunch of things to enrich the data.
Right.
So that helps us with our outreach, helps us with personalizing the in-app experiences better. So I knew about the data enrichment side, but talk to me a little bit about the data quality side. I'm not familiar with how you guys help with that.
So data quality, I think, sort of comes in like three various formats. I think format number one is the simplest, which you're already familiar with. So I think data enrichment is a key piece, but
Okay.
oftentimes in a pre-Clay world, I actually think people forget to give us the credit for really inventing the waterfall concept as well. People were like,
Okay.
I was doing this, right? Like manually uploading and downloading CSVs between every single data provider that we had in order to
Yeah.
increase match rate. So like that's
Okay.
one element of data quality that is really coverage. Then I think the second element of data quality is standardization, and that has two sub-elements, right? So with standardization, you have a bunch of like rules and expressions. So like simple one would be NYC versus New York City versus Brooklyn, all as location names in your CRM. You
Yeah.
probably want to treat those all the same, and it's
Yeah.
probably better to standardize them so that people aren't missing swaths of your data by only searching for one of the four. You can
Okay.
do
Got
that
it.
via this code and formulas and cleanliness for the standardization of it. And then
Yeah.
you run into that second subset of standardization, which is things that are a little bit more complicated than a formula. So let's say I have a bunch of job titles in my CRM. I want to group those people by seniority. Like simple approach is let me try and take out the word head or director or VP or something out of the job title to grab
Yeah.
seniority. But these
Yeah.
days people call themselves a bunch of things. Like where
Yeah.
do you put a GTM engineer, right, on
Right.
seniority, or like a senior GTM engineer, right? So
Yeah.
you can then run AI either to go scrape the web or to reason on your data in Clay at scale, and it can go
Okay.
pick out those data points for you, or it can help clean up those data points for you. And so those are like the
Okay.
three prongs of data hygiene I think about.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it reminds me of a few other tools that I'm familiar with. Are you familiar with like InCycle, which helps
Yeah.
people like with duplicate, filling in missing areas, standardizing fields like titles or locations. So it sounds like you're doing elements of that. And then also the third thing you described kind of sounds like N8N, where you can create
Yep,
like kind of a workflow where you're saying like you execute this code when this happens, and you could feasibly, I guess, use N8N to do what you're talking about, where it would go find
you could
the content, right?
100%.
But I imagine you make that a whole lot easier because you have all the integrations with the data providers and as well as the LLMs and all the other stuff, right?
Exactly. Like I think I know both the tools you just mentioned, and I
Yep.
would say like the other thing I'm always honest about is like N8N is a good example. There are many
Mm.
things that you can do in Clay that you could replicate in NAN. It then just
Okay.
becomes a like preference of platform workflow versus a table format, the native
Yeah.
integrations, and some of the like external features that are bundled around it. Like N8N is a very horizontal platform. Uh,
Right.
we are like very specifically purpose built for GTM. So there are like certain elements
Yeah.
of the
And
GTM side
specifically
that are native
contact
to us.
data, company data, and like processing that at the row level, right? Like, and that's
Exactly.
more efficient in your system than it would be in NNN. So, from
Yeah.
my perspective,
But
I assume
I
you
also
would agree.
use N8N. My personal favorite, actually, I'll shout it out, is Gumloop
Yeah.
of all the workflow automation
Oh,
tools.
okay. I'm not familiar.
Um, yeah, I find it, I used to, so I was a Zapier user for a long time because I used to run,
Mm.
actually, this is another area where I use Databox. I ran my
Okay.
own low code agency and then gave people efficiency analytics that we streamlined from an Airtable that I had linked up to all the automations we were running vis-a-vis a
Okay.
dashboard that was made in Databox. Um,
Okay.
and then in that agency, I used Zapier a lot. And then I went from Zapier to N8N, actually. And then I went from N8N to Gumloop. And I would say
Okay.
that like, I think of Gumloop, N8N, Zapier, all of these like workflow automation tools sort of as last mile automation for the type of work that we do, because there's
Yeah.
a lot of benefits to like the GTM and the visibility part that you get in
Yeah.
Clay for orchestration. But then there's like running like anything that needs to run in like large parallel clusters, or like where I'm doing lots of conditional formulas. And so I'm
Yeah.
having branching logic where like now all of a sudden half of my table is not running. I don't need to
Yeah.
look at half of that table anymore. And it's slowing everything down. So for those types of flows, or for more complex code types of flows, I send the data from Clay to a Gum loop or N8N, process it
Okay.
there, and then we'll bring it back.
Okay. Got it. So there's still a role, and it sounds like you maybe have a decent number of customers that are using both Clay and a tool like Gumloop or N8N to
Yeah,
do
I
certain.
think these days all the rage is Claude Code plus Clay.
Yeah.
Or some people even are
Yeah.
like Claude Code can replace Clay, and we can have that
Yeah.
whole debate if we want as well. I
Yeah.
think there are cases for, and I think there are
Yeah.
cases against. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think Claude is like is everybody's saying, "Oh, Claude can do this. Claude to do everything." So, like, I think some people have this vision of like Claude just replacing their whole stack, which I don't think we're quite there yet. We're heavy Claude users ourselves, of course. So,
same. I will
but,
say I love
yeah,
Claude, but
yeah,
my like soapbox that I'll die on for this one is everyone's
mhm,
talking about build versus buy. And
yeah,
I actually wrote about this maybe yesterday or earlier this week. I think it's a false dichotomy, right? It's not
yeah,
just build versus buy. It's like build and
right,
maintain and debug and create and
yeah,
innovate and
right,
scale versus buy, because you buy a
yeah,
lot of other things beyond the
right.
build. So
Yeah, yeah, it's
yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, we're very much a build on top of the systems we have, right? Augment them,
same,
to augment them or to tailor them to our needs. But yeah, like we've canceled very few software contracts at this point. Even though I
same
would
here. If
say
anything, we have added many more.
quite a
So
bit going. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
um, we're somewhat ruthless about like not using three of the same tools and picking one and then centralizing. But beyond
as you
that,
should be financially. Yeah.
yeah. Um, cool. So, strategy for the company, maybe give us a little background of like, when the company started, how big you guys are now, because like a lot of people probably who don't know you or don't know how impressive Clay's growth's been. So,
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think that, so for context, I think very few
mhm,
people actually know this history. We were
okay,
actually started about 9 years ago. So
okay,
that would be, I think, 2017 is when
yeah,
Kareem, our CEO and founder, started the
nice,
company.
yeah,
And it was a horizontal automation tool similar
okay,
to N8N and to Zapier, but like in a table-based format
okay,
for the first 6, 7 years. It still is that today. But I think a
yeah,
lot of the momentum that we've picked up over the last 3 years in particular, I joined in January of 3 years ago.
okay,
Correlation, causation, I'll let you decide. But
yeah,
yeah, I'm kidding, to be very clear. But uh, it has been the GTM focus actually, right? Like I think focusing in on a specific
Yes.
enough problem with a broad enough aperture that people resonate with what we're doing, and then we keep building features that sort of expand and like grow from our initial audience. So the journey
Yeah.
of growth for Clay was having like a consistent but like slow growing churn heavy user base for the first 5-6 years. I think
Okay.
around year 5 or 6 is when we started doing more of the like go to market, cold outbound agencies, service and support. And I think the big insight there is that even though Clay has a learning curve to it, it's not a simple tool.
For sure.
Um,
Yeah.
it's also not rocket science. So it lands somewhere in between.
Yeah. Agreed.
If you can promise somebody like a 10x improvement on their work,
Mhm.
truly, then the incentive is there to go spend the time learning it. And so I think we
Right.
focused a lot on like flexibility and power and functionality. And then we
Mhm.
won over a lot of those early users. And we were also very stubborn about trying to build a PLG motion. And so like Varun has talked about this, our other co-founder, on several
Mhm.
interviews. He like sort of invented this reverse demo format where when we were
Okay.
hopping on a call with a customer, instead of us just showing them the software, we would have them
Yeah.
create an account, pull it up
Yeah.
on their screen, and then I would annotate and point to where they need to click in order to
Got
do
it.
the thing that they wanted to do. Because the
Yeah.
point there is to demonstrate in 30 minutes or less, I can get you further along the path than you think. You'll have enough
Yeah.
confidence to start getting more value out of it. And
Yep.
wherever customers were doing something incorrectly or it was impossible to explain, that's the best product feedback loop for our
Totally.
engineering team to then go fix those features, change the button placement, look at what we should be actually doing to foster that growth.
Got
So
it. For those listening, I'm going to say this. It's going to sound rude, but you're not old enough to claim you've invented that. But I totally get it. We used to do that early days HubSpot, and I'm sure we weren't
you're
the
good.
first either. Doing the reverse demo, and yeah, it forces them to like feel it and feel accomplished, right? It's not just like, oh, I'm going to show you how to do it, and you have to remember all this. It's like, let's just walk you through it. It makes it feel simpler to them, and then they also have learned it. So it's great,
Yeah.
great tactic. Like, and when you're selling products that aren't rocket science, like you said, but do require some learning curve and maybe be a little intimidating, it's a great technique. So cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
I'm
And
happy
so
to be
give us
humbled
a
on
feel
that.
for how big the
Yeah.
company is now in some metric.
Yeah. So I would say when I joined, we were about 8 or 9 people in like a 1 bedroom
Yeah.
apartment in Williamsburg. And we
Okay,
are
you're in the early.
now, yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then we're about to be 360, 370.
Oh
And
wow.
we're
Okay.
moving into 11 Madison Square in August, which we just
Oh,
announced, which is going to
fancy.
be super fun in New York. So yeah, it's going to be
Very.
like our first like true foray
Yeah.
into being like a real, true big tech company, which is going to be crazy.
Where are you now? Where are you right now? Like physically?
I'm currently in our like Flatiron location. So we have two
Oh,
floors
you're in New
at
York.
like a
Okay.
building.
Got it.
I'm in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Nice. Long
But yeah.
time ago, I consulted or advised a startup company in the Flatiron area, so I know the
Oh,
area.
nice. There
Yeah.
you go.
They didn't make it, but hopefully you guys do. I'm sure you
Unfortunately.
will.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so company's done well. It sounds like a long period of time of like slogging it. And then when you focused in on the go-to market, the sales kind of use cases, it's when the company kind of found product market fit and started scaling up, raised money, grew the team, et cetera.
Correct. Yeah. I think there were like a trio of
Hmm.
like really important product features. I sort of describe the journey as like pre PMF. We had a
Yeah.
product, but we didn't
Yeah.
have like enough of a platform.
You didn't have enough
So we were
retention to
trying
scale. Yeah. That's very common in
exactly.
SaaS. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think once you build your core set of functionality, you have an actual platform that you can sell. And then from that
Hmm.
platform, you start to expand into other use cases. If you could sell the core platform, and then you need to
Yeah.
sell adjacent use cases and like expand
Yeah.
upstream or downstream or adjacent.
Right.
And I think, yeah, in
What were those
2023,
three? What were those three features that the trio of features you said? What were those?
yeah, it's funny. I was just reminiscing on this with one of our other
Yeah.
early folks the other day. It was essentially for people that have used Clay, this might be hard to believe, but for quite a while, we did not have a company's people jobs data set. We had a couple
Oh,
of like very specific starter lists. Like you could go look at the like
mm,
Series A companies we were able to pull down from like
okay.
Crunchbase or something else. And that was it.
Yep.
So most people, like 95% of people were uploading CSVs that they were pulling from like an Apollo or a Sales Now scrape or something else into Clay manually.
Okay.
So I
Got
think
it.
we had a single engineer, his name is Roger. who I think someone was telling me at some point that Roger did the work of like what would take 20 people at Amazon 2 quarters to do in like a month and a half. So
Okay.
thank you, Roger, incredible engineer.
Yeah.
He stood that up himself, and I think that was a big inflection point for us in terms of feeling like you could actually do the end-to-end motion in Clay.
I kind of
Um,
remember it was like the first time there was like a tool that connected to your systems and it lets you like pull but had the data store as well. Like I
Okay.
remember for decades, we've basically been scrounging lists together, putting them together in Excel and uploading to our CRM. So you guys were the first ones to say like that should be together. And it was a foreign
yeah.
concept. It was a foreign concept for people. But
Yep.
like, your data must suck or your tool must suck, one or the other. Like nobody believed that you could do both and do both fairly well. So what was the second one?
Yeah. No, it's a good observation. I think that it's just funny in hindsight, right? Like how obvious it
Yeah.
feels, but it was hard at the time. The second one is what I sort of touched on already, which is waterfalls. So, and
Mhm.
like with waterfalls, there's a sub point in there that becomes like AI formulas. Because all a waterfall is, especially for like someone who's never touched Clay before, is let's say I want to get data from 10 different enrichment providers. I'm looking for someone's email.
Mhm.
If I use one provider, I see this all the time. My coverage is like 60%. That's like
Yep.
40% of people that I'm never getting. At two
Right.
providers, maybe it goes up to 70. At three, maybe it goes up to 80. Then you get all the way to eight, and we're actually hitting 90 or sometimes even 100% on certain
Wow.
data points.
Okay.
So it's worth it to have all those subscriptions, but
Yep.
it's really painful. Like we had all these integrations before, we
Yeah.
didn't have the native waterfall concept. So what I was doing as an early customer of Clay is I would set
Yep.
up each of the email providers, and then I would go in and write JavaScript into each column cell to then say,
Yep.
only run if this result is this valid into the next cell. And I would do that
Okay.
manually for every single provider in that waterfall. And then I would
Okay.
recreate that manually from scratch every time.
Every
And this is when I
time.
come
Okay.
back to like, the pain is still so large
So
that it was
did you
worth it.
come up with this? Did you come up with the
I
waterfall
did not.
idea?
I cannot take credit
Oh,
for coming up with that. I
okay.
believe it was Brian.
You had the pain. You knew what the pain was. Yeah.
Yeah. But now, you can automatically insert 10 providers at once. We'll do the conditional routing and the logic for you. And
Right.
this kind of leads into the third point, right?
Yep.
AI really was a big accelerant for us because now you can use AI to auto generate those small snippets of code that are linking together your columns. So you don't have to
Yep.
like understand JavaScript.
Okay.
Or really like our specific, it's like clay script. It's like a Frankenstein version
Yeah.
of JavaScript to be specific.
Okay.
And technically TypeScript, but whatever. Sorry, I'm getting too technical.
I see. Yeah.
Uh,
So
and
the
then the other
AI
big thing,
can allow
yeah,
you to execute the waterfall without sitting there saying, do this then and in the JavaScript is what you're saying.
yeah. So AI sort of played us like a secondary function to waterfalls in terms of making
Yeah.
conditional formulas easier to use. But then
Yep.
AI is also a third category entirely of its own because the
Okay.
ability to, let's say, run an OpenAI call at scale across 10,000 rows in Clay is
Yeah.
massive for people. And then also we built the web scraper that has become one of our like biggest standout features where people can now fill what I would call like the last mile data problem. No matter how
Got it.
much enrichment data you get for your specific industry, company, ICP, there are probably nuanced, important things that move the needle on
Yep.
your sales process, but
Yep.
no data provider is going to give it to you. So you're going to have a human go grab it.
Right.
But now with the AI web scraper, we can start to fill that last mile of
You
data.
can go to the prospect's website or whatever and ask the right question and figure it out from the way what's on their website or how their website's structured or what they do or don't do on that website. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's interesting because all these problems in my career, I or someone on my team have done very manually, and I can
Yep.
remember data providers like we would do one, and then we were like, all right, that one sucks. Let's try the next one, and that sucks. And then we realize, okay, well, to get the good data, we just have to pay Zoom Info because they have the best data set, and they're really freaking expensive. So like, we'll try it for a few months and see if it helps, right?
Yep.
And so you guys came along with this waterfall concept and solved that problem as well.
Exactly. I think that's another thing that we don't talk a lot about, but I really think is such a simple but important innovation in the space is
Mhm.
because you know this well. You can also remember that like for any data provider worth their salt years and years ago, you
Yeah.
had to pay an annual contract or they tried to
Yeah.
force you into one. It's
And it was
5 to
expensive.
6 figures. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so much money.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then you like aren't really sure if you're actually using all of your data or the seats or getting the value out
Yeah.
of it. And now
Right.
you're like throwing money into a sinkhole of like
Yep.
the data is just important. So like it's worth it, but is it optimized?
Yeah. Is it
Um,
optimized? Is it up to date? How are they keeping it up to date? Are they relying on are they stealing what we do and sending it back to other people? There was a whole,
the answer, by the way, is yes.
was it
Yes.
Jigsaw? I think it was Jigsaw that did that.
Yep.
They ended up selling to Salesforce. Jigsaw's whole business model was like, we have lots of customers that are updating their contact data, so then it's up to date for you. Like, oh, great.
Right.
So you're selling our work back to us. Thanks. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
But I think that
It's
like
a
we did the partnerships with individual data providers so that you could pay as you go. And pay as
Gotcha.
you go then slowly became more and more of an industry standard. And I would
Okay.
actually say like outside of AI, again, that's
Yeah.
something that like I'm proud that we were able to shift a little bit, which is
Gotcha.
data that you pay as you go.
Yep. Makes sense. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we had enough of like what you guys do and the
Yeah.
strategy to get there. Like what's next? I noticed that you not too long ago you launched something around ad targeting or personalization. So
Yeah.
like what do you guys see next? Where are you going next?
So I think that we have branded ourselves as the go-to-market company for a while, and it's
Mm-hmm.
been mostly true, but we've focused on very specific use cases. The journey, as I see it, has been
Mm-hmm.
we started with like truly just data enrichment, and then we migrated into outbound, and then we started migrating into inbound and CRM enrichment, and
Yep.
now we're starting to really get into marketing, which
Okay.
contains like ads, it contains lifecycle emails, it contains like how do I organize large chunks of my data. That's the audiences feature that we recently launched.
Okay.
And what I would say, without giving away things that I can't give away, is
Mm-hmm.
that I think we're going to continue to try and do our best to really just become the toolkit of choice for
Okay.
different people in different parts of the go-to-market profession.
Okay.
So
Got it. So
you can imagine
expanding
at some
the use
point,
cases
yeah.
within the go-to-market world and the stuff that is out is the ad stuff. Tell me about the audiences. What's that?
So audiences is this idea where like we'll hook up to your CRM or your data warehouse or both, and then we
Mm,
will provide to you. There's like truly honestly like an incredible engineering feat by the team to do this.
yeah.
Uh, but like you can now add filters. So imagine like the pain that audiences solves is at a large enough company. If you've been there in the past, if you as a marketer want to get a pull of customer data from your data warehouse or CRM, you have to go ask the data team because they have to go write like a custom SQL query to make
Yep.
sure that they're pulling the right data from the right fields with the right accuracy so that you're not mass emailing the wrong people or
Of
like
course.
targeting ads towards an incorrect audience.
Yep.
Um, with audiences now, that ironic that the terms worked out there. Uh, you can actually have a data person set up the entire infrastructure connected into Clay. And now I, as like a marketer, can go in without having to know SQL. And I can just
Mhm.
add a bunch of those, like you've used it in like Notion or Airtable before. Databox has these filters as well, where it's like,
Yep.
yes, like, for company greater than one opportunity or, greater than
Yes.
10 impressions or in between uh, A to B
Right.
or
You're
contains
tapping
X.
into the database to create segments of the audience of the database to then do your targeting on your ads. Okay.
Yes,
And does that
exactly.
help with like lookalike audiences as well so that you can train the ad systems to go and like look for people like this that meet these criteria, this audience criteria? Okay. Got it.
It does. Yeah. So it sort of helps with everything downstream of it because now that you're operating at enough scale, if you
Mhm.
can just quickly get a slice of that data and then take an action or a hypothesis on that data, whether it's
Yeah.
outbound audience for an ad, looking up lookalikes, it
Yeah.
becomes much easier.
Okay. Got it. Very cool. Nice. So you're just basically expanding the use cases of the core product and building from that. So yeah, it's
That's
awesome.
the
Cool.
dream. Yeah.
All right. And then so let's step back and like talk a little bit about how you guys manage strategically. Do you like how who decides and how do you decide where you're going 12 months from now?
Yeah.
Like what's that process look like? I'm not asking you to share the secrets of what you're doing, just more of like how do you guys arrive at these things
No, for
and
sure.
how do you communicate them internally and all of that?
Well, so I think the funny thing about this, because I am being fully honest when I say this, is that like the only thing that we think about in terms of like a year timeline is like what's our revenue goal that we want to hit.
Okay.
Even like the how we get there, we
Mhm.
do enough of like now we do enough of like a forecasting exercise to try and break it down quarter by quarter to make sure that we have targets that we can hit
Yep.
from like again just a broad revenue perspective. But I
Sure.
think what's fascinating even at our size today is that we don't do a lot of like year-long product progress planning mapping. We don't do
Okay.
a lot of like year-long, for example, even like my team in ecosystem, I sort of
Mhm.
know the general direction that I want us to head in, and I know the like most immediate short-term things that are top of mind.
Yep.
But if I told you I had like a year-long plan for where I want the team to end up exactly,
Yeah.
I'd be lying.
Do you have like
Um,
a quarterly plan? Like
I
how
do have a
much?
quarterly plan. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, all right, that's good. Otherwise, I was
Yeah.
gonna start criticizing, but totally makes sense. You guys have the revenue target, you have smart people, you're fast growing already, so, like, you can have some wiggle room around what you do 3 quarters from now, right? You don't need to have that foresight, and plus, if you try to, you might get it wrong. Um, but
Exactly.
but on a quarterly basis, each team is, like, putting together, like, what are their key objectives or projects, or how do you guys
Exactly.
think about it?
Yeah, so like
Yeah.
on a quarterly basis, like I'll give you this example from our team because I think it's shareable, right? Like there are within the ecosystem six
Mhm.
sort of broader subgroups. There's
Okay.
like what I call innovation, which is like our startup programs and our campus programs. There's
Okay.
community, which is our digital Slack community, our IRL Clay clubs. There's 84 of them around the world,
Oh,
and
wow.
then our like Clay Cup, which is our annual competition. Then we
Okay.
have live trainings, which happen digitally and in person. We have
Okay.
async content on the university, and then we have a certification and badging ecosystem, and then a talent marketplace. So those are like the
Wow.
six
Okay.
subgroups of the ecosystem that we currently have.
Gotcha.
Um, and then the way that we, because we're actually in the middle of finishing up Q2 planning, so it's a timely ask.
Yeah, yep.
Uh, right. So for each of those functions, there's a couple
It's
of sub
funny.
functions
People
within
play
them.
there. We're doing the same thing though.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I mean,
I mean, we're tech
I keep
companies,
telling
right?
my mouses, like, we should just do it 3 times a year because that's basically we're always a month behind.
Exactly. Well, so for
But
us, we like moved this year to start our fiscal quarters
oh,
on
yeah, you could
the
do that
February.
too. Yeah, that's another
Yeah.
way to cheat.
So we had like a long quarter. This was like our four
Yeah,
month quarter this year.
I gotcha.
Um, But yeah, so I have basically, and like happy to talk about them if you'd like, but like plans for each of those sub
Each of
functions
those
in
things.
terms of how we want to grow, what the scale we want to hit is. And
Yeah.
some of the question, which delves into maybe what you want to know next, is like, what are the metrics that we hold ourselves accountable to and that are most important for
Oh,
driving
yeah,
that
you're like,
component
step
piece
ahead. You
forward?
must watch the podcast. Yeah. So yeah, pick one. Pick one of those 6 areas. Yeah, and I'd love to hear what are you measuring? I'd love to hear the badging and certification one if you don't mind.
Yeah. So the badging and certification one is interesting because we launched a process back in, gosh, September, October of last year. And
Okay.
I'll like say that I have never seen a badging or a certification process that I have liked
Okay.
as like a learner or an educator.
Yep.
Inevitably, what happens is the whole purpose of a credential is to bypass some of the like, I need to see your work, I need to quiz you, I need
Sure.
to understand
It's a
if you're
third
actually
party
good at this
filter.
thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But then are you really going to get a good sense of that from like a couple of multiple choice questions and like a proctored assessment of what someone does? Probably
Right.
not.
Probably not. Yeah.
So it becomes this credential that gets gamed very quickly in industry.
Sure.
And then it just starts to mean nothing. So I had a very strongly held opinion that we should try and do it differently. And the way that we should do it differently is certify people based on the work that they've actually done. So we
Okay.
launched V1 of our certifications process in the winter of last year. And it was purely build your clay tables, submit your clay tables, and then
Okay.
we will process, read them, evaluate them, and then return back
Yeah.
a
So they were doing
certification.
it like on a demo account or their own account or something and submitting it and say, I did what I'm supposed to do. Okay.
Correct. And then we would
Yeah.
grade it. Um,
Nice.
the unfortunate reality is people still found this is what I mean. People will find ways to game your
Do
system.
that. Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
and so we
Copy.
started to see that
Yeah.
happening. Like someone made a post about like, I can get you clay certified in 15 minutes. And then he was like linking 3 templates. And I
Got
was like,
it.
okay, fine. Yeah. If you like change the variable names and then it's hard for us to detect if it's exactly the same table.
Right.
And then we just got into this race where like for a month, I was trying to build with the team a bunch of different like anti-fraud
Okay.
flags. And then we
Yeah.
took a step back and we're like, maybe we should just redesign the whole thing. Maybe we like didn't meet our original objective.
Well, what you really underappreciated, Yash, is that people are actually doing it. Most companies that launch a
True.
certification program, it's crickets. So you were fortunate in that you had demand for sure and interest. And there's a business model, right? Like there's a business model for them to get certified and then they can get work, right? And the implementing Clay,
Exactly.
as you talked about earlier, is not rocket science, but does require a learning curve. And so like even when we took Clay on, like we put a person on it He has a few other smaller responsibilities, but it's a good portion of his time is that. But we also still hired a consultant to help him like onboard, right? So
Right.
like there's the need there. So how'd you change it? How'd you change the certification? How'd you make it a little less
So
front?
so we hit pause, which was actually to your
Yeah.
point. I do appreciate just how much the community really wanted them. There was
Right.
some incredible backlash, but all
Yeah.
things went like as well as handled. I think people understood what we were
Yeah.
going for.
Yeah.
And then someone on my team has been doing an incredible job of rethinking and redesigning like what this could be.
Yep.
And we're still going to try and take a, courageous bet on what we think it should be. So
Okay.
I'll give you a little preview of it because it's going to be released soon, but there's going to be
Okay.
multiple levels to the certification. We're going to be assessing multiple dimensions of what we
Okay.
think makes a go-to-market engineer. So one
Got it.
dimension is going to be, do you know how to think about these problems like an engineer that has an understanding of the tools in this landscape? And
Yeah.
that's going to be a live assessment that we're going to have
Okay.
conversationally from like a case
Oh
study,
wow.
fictional scenario.
Interview. Right. Okay. Yeah. That.
Yeah. And like, you, you can't game that, So like, that's part of the
Yeah,
design
yeah,
there.
yeah. Unless have you seen those commercials where like somebody's doing an interview and they like smear the peanut butter on their camera and then they bring up ChatGPT or Claude or something? I think it's literally
Yes, I have seen those.
impossible. So
Yeah,
somebody will figure it out. But yeah, it's harder to game for sure.
exactly. Some people will eventually do it. And I think like,
Yeah,
to your point, that's a sign of a
yeah.
good program. So I'm okay with it. But I just want it to be
Right.
hard to game. I want it to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
like,
yeah. It's a
you
little
have to
harder
have
to
tried.
15 minutes.
Like it
Yeah.
should be so hard that
Yeah.
in the time that you took to game the system, you could have
Mhm.
just learned the skill.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
that's what I want it to be.
Totally. Totally.
Um,
Makes sense.
and then, yeah, like the other two layers are going to be live building. So you can't just templatize and
Mhm.
use someone else's work. We're going to see if you can apply that creativity from the
Yeah.
verbal sort of critical thought reason to a live build as well. And
Okay.
then there's going to be a third level of like, have you done it for real? Have you done it for a customer, for yourself,
Perfect.
for
Okay.
like an employer? And then
Yep.
that will be peer reviewed by the community. So
Okay. Oh wow. Okay, that's cool.
yeah,
I like
let's
that.
see.
That's awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that last one is the key, right? And I like as a program matures, you'll have more and more people that have like I'm sure you already do. You already have people that have probably implemented Clay 100 times, right? And so like clearly they should be the ones that are at the top of the list.
exactly.
Um, so that's good. Cool. And then so how do you measure the success of that program? Like what metrics do you guys track internally to say like this is worth the effort, this is having an impact on the business, this is the impact? How do you do that?
Yeah. So I think first, I think about the dimensions across which we would measure success of that program. So I think
Mhm.
the most rudimentary dimension is, are we getting people certified?
Yeah.
So like, what's the number of people going through a certification process, and how
Yeah.
many of them are emerging actually certified?
Yeah.
Now, the caveat I'll add to that number is we don't necessarily want it to be a high number, right? This is where like the second dimension of the like tracking will come in, which
Okay.
is of the people that we certify, how many do we then see placed at either an enterprise or mid-market company hiring for that talent because we know that that's a need from our
Okay.
sales process and GS programs. So we're actually
Okay.
going to try and use these certified individuals to also help buttress some of the requests we are constantly getting from companies
Okay.
looking to hire this type of talent.
Got
And
it.
then the third dimension, which is like a longevity metric, is checking in, seeing how it goes, right? Like I think we
Mhm.
want the certification to be accurate, which the
Yeah.
only way to check for that is once we get someone certified, once we place them in their next role or they start their next thing,
Yeah.
are they doing well? Checking in on like what well means. And so that's a little bit more of a qualitative assessment from like the
Gotcha.
employer standpoint of across these dimensions that we also measure on the certification side. How do you
Yeah.
think this person is holding up?
Gotcha. Cool. Have you been able to tie it more closely to any of your financial metrics? Like, are these people out there, are they reselling the product, or are you measuring retention of the customers that they work with, or anything like that that makes a more direct financial tie? I'm sure you've gotten that question from the CFO at some point.
Oh, for sure. Well, I think there's basically for the so almost everything that we do is both
Mhm.
incredibly important to the financial metrics and also indirectly like unimportant. And like I'll give you the certifications example, and then I'll also give you like another example that I think will make even more sense.
Okay.
Because attribution is just hard,
Very hard.
especially from
Yeah.
a marketing standpoint, which you know better than anyone.
Yeah.
Um, thing number one is that we can somewhat, for certifications at least, get at the financial impact because we have historical data on companies where we don't have a strong individual champion or someone has left the organization are like
Yeah.
60, 70, 80% more likely to churn at time of renewal.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
so like number of people we can place successfully into companies that have a gap there comes
Yep.
back to a retention metric for us that
Yep.
is, not directly impactful, but like very responsible for. And
Gotcha.
then I think also the thing that I'm really excited for, actually, we don't have this yet, but we will try and plan it,
Mhm.
is as we add more Clay users or GTMEs really to
Yep.
companies that have more use cases they want to be expanding with us into, do we see a correlation between time of hire and time of expansion of usage of contract in the
Okay.
directions that they're asking for? Because a
Gotcha.
lot of
Cool.
times it's a skill issue. Um,
Yep.
so like that's one way we think about it on the certification side. But then like to give
Okay.
you a totally different, but also like interesting example, we also run these IRL workshops. So we'll
Okay.
invite 20 target customers,
Those that
typically
aren't familiar,
champions.
you mean in real life? Go ahead.
Yes,
Yeah.
IRL means in real life. Yep.
Go ahead.
Too millennial for myself, for my own
We
good.
have some older people that listen to the podcast, so I don't want them to get lost.
Thank you for checking me on that. Um, and so these IRL workshops, very,
Uh-huh.
very, 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 very hard. And
Yeah.
in real life workshops,
Yeah.
uh,
No,
very
you can say
hard
that. You
to,
define it once.
yeah, very hard to attribute back to revenue because
Yeah.
it is just one of many, many, many touch points that we might have with a customer along the journey. There
Yep.
is the subjective anecdotal evidence that we get from customers, or sorry, prospects who come to
Yeah.
these events that are like, oh, now I understand Clay can do this and this and this. So I'm actually going to add all those back into my POC. And now we see contract size go up.
Yep.
Or now that we've built faith in a technical champion who's actually excited to use the tool, even though we've gotten there conceptually, the deal moves along much more quickly because you actually have people that are like, I need this to do my work now.
Gotcha.
Are
Yep.
we able to accurately measure any of that? Not really. But what we're going to try and get to
Yeah.
is we do know how much pipeline is in a room because we know the average opportunity sizes from when we run that workshop.
Yeah.
I can poke holes in that number, 9 ways
Yeah,
till
but no,
Sunday,
that's
but
a
it's
good way to
fine.
do it. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have
And then we can see
you
how
do
that increases or
self-reported
velocity changes.
do you all do self-reported attribution where you ask your your signups or your new customers, like, how they heard about you? No?
No, not really. I mean, I think we do on onboarding, but I
Yeah.
am a huge skeptic of those surveys, if only because,
Oh,
like,
really? If it's open text, you get good answers. It's
okay,
not
well,
all
so there I agree with you. Yes, if it's open
representative.
text.
It's not like, perfect tracking where you can say, "We know where everybody came from or what all their touch points are," but it gives you some indicators of
It
what's
gives you a
actually
directional. That
things
is
that are
true.
influence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say the best attribution we get for that, ironically, actually, is because we have such
Uh,
a strong social media flywheel. People will
okay.
post on LinkedIn all the time about like, oh, I went through this, and then ended up at Clay.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
if you Google like 16 touch points Clay attribution on like
Uh-huh.
LinkedIn's website, you'll probably find this post. Someone made a really great post about there were like 16 different moments that
Oh,
Clay
they
interacted
actually
with
kept
him.
track of their own touch points before they bought your product?
Yeah, exactly. They were like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I created an account, didn't
Yeah.
wanna do it. Went to an
Yeah,
event,
yeah.
didn't wanna do it." And,
Got
like,
it.
the workshop was one of them towards the end where he's like, "Oh, I finally got it." And so,
Mhm.
anecdotally, things like
Yeah,
that
no, I
help
get
us
all
know
these
that it
anecdotes,
works.
like, you may or may not know, but I publish on LinkedIn pretty much every day, and
I
so,
love your LinkedIn
like
posts. I read them all the
thank you.
time.
So
Yeah.
so I constantly hear from the team like, "Oh, they've been following you forever," or, that in fact, there was
Right.
somebody that, like, on the management team that, like, ran into a random person and like, "Oh, I follow your CEO on LinkedIn," right? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's not that all that stuff matters, it's just it's hard to track, right? Yeah, it's hard to
Basically.
justify.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool, but it sounds like there's a culture there where, like, not everything needs to be tracked. They understand that, like, this kind of stuff has influence and has impact, even if you can't perfectly correlate it to closed deal.
Correct.
Yeah.
I would even go so far as to, like, reframe that into we almost do track everything.
Yeah,
But there are 2 types of data that we will take in, right? One is what everyone is used to. It's like the financial metrics, the tracking, the planning, the spreadsheet. And
of
then the
course.
other is just the feeling. I think that like the subway ads, these programs, these
Yeah,
workshops, like you can tell if you're doing something well for the most part. Are you
yeah,
feeling the pull of the market? Are you feeling the pull of
yeah,
customers?
yeah.
And I
You
think we
got
just
it.
pay attention to that more than the average company does instead of second
Yeah,
guessing whether or not it has a
definitely
direct
more than
return
we
on
do at
bottom line.
Databox, definitely more than we did at HubSpot. At HubSpot, Dharmesh had a phrase he would frequently say in meetings, which was basically, trust in God, all others bring data. so like we don't trust your fucking feelings. In fact, there was a meeting where Halligan, like I shared some feelings about something, and Halligan's like, we don't really do good with feelings. Let's get to the numbers. so
Yeah,
so
totally
yeah,
fair.
it's a unique culture. Enjoy it. Like it's nice that they give you that grace and they trust your trust what you're hearing and feeling and all that stuff. That's good. It's important.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
very thankful for it for sure.
yeah, enjoy. Cool. Anything else you want to add about what you're doing or what Clay's doing that you think our audience might appreciate?
Uh, I don't know. I think the only thing I'll add is just that I think it's a really exciting time
Mhm.
to be in these spaces. I think it's really
Yeah.
easy to feel overwhelmed and intimidated by AI. So if there's like one thing I can add, it's that like
Yeah.
I often tell our customers this, it is my literal job to know the platform in and out, and I
Right.
still feel behind in terms of all the things that are coming out.
Okay.
So I don't think it's possible for everyone to stay fully on top of things. But the
Yep.
reason I still think it's so exciting is if you are someone who has the curiosity, the drive, and the willingness to adapt and learn,
Yeah.
the world is your oyster right now. Like you can
Totally.
open up Claude Design, you can open up Perplexity Computer, you can just test and figure things out and
Yep.
build skills that I could never have even dreamt of being possible years ago.
Right.
Uh,
Totally.
and so, yeah, we're just trying to like nerd out and have fun with tech here and see how we can do things for fun. So if you're interested in
Yeah.
that ever, come be a part of the ecosystem. That's what I would say.
Come be part of the ecosystem. Exactly. And so ways
Yeah.
they can do that, then they can get certified clearly, which lines them up, it seems like, to essentially get referrals or even job opportunities through you. What other
Yep.
ways can they get engaged in your community?
Yeah. So I think there's probably three big ones I would send people to. I think number
Mhm.
one is if you're interested in learning more about the product, the use cases, where it goes from,
Yep.
university.clay.com.
Okay.
Number two is on that university website, you'll see a lot of async content and all the other parts of our ecosystem. But I think the other
Videos.
thing that people
Yep.
find exactly a lot more valuable are the live learnings. So like we
Okay.
do live digital programs and we do cohorts, and then we also do
Okay.
these workshops. So like feel free to go there. And the
Is the
other beautiful
live
thing about that,
in person or virtual or both?
both.
Both. Okay.
And then
Cool.
that leads into the third piece, which is like the community. So we do have these Clay Club chapters in a lot of major cities. Like there's 84
Okay.
around the world. If you're in like
Yep.
LA or SF or New York or London or Barcelona or like, I'm not going to list all 84, but
Yeah. You saw.
there's a ton of them. Yeah, exactly. And so it's fun to meet other people IRL. I think as much as we get more and
Yeah.
more digital, IRL still is magical.
Yep.
And we have a
IRL is
digital
better
Slack
than you
community.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Good call out.
We're getting all the acronyms out. So cool. Thanks, Josh. And then if they want to, do you publish regularly anywhere? Do you like where should people follow you?
Yeah, so if people are interested in following what I talk about or what I'm thinking
Mm.
about, I write pretty regularly on LinkedIn as well.
Okay.
And I have a Substack. It's
You do. Sweet.
substack.99%yash.com. If you Google that,
Okay.
you'll find it. Yeah.
Got it. If they Google your name, I'm sure. Are you the only Yash Tekriwal on the
I
internet, or
believe
is there
so. It's
more?
great for
All right.
SEO. I've always joked
Congratulations.
about that from a young age.
Cool, man. Well, thank you for taking the time and joining us here, and sharing a bit about Clay and what you up to and how you think, how the company operates. Really appreciate the insights. Congrats on the success. Nice job, and good work. Cool, man.
Appreciate
Well,
it.
thanks.